My name is Rose Miller. I'm 75 years old, and last night I slept at a bus stop. Do you know what it feels like to sell your entire home, the place that held 40 years of memories, to save your son from bankruptcy, only to have that same child throw you out into the rain? I sat shivering under the shelter of bus stop number 7, watching Seattle's cold rain pour down, wondering how a mother could be so wrong. $450,000, everything I had, and David called me a useless burden. But that's not the scariest part. The scary part is when you're 75, homeless, penniless, and the only person you trusted just betrayed you. Before I tell you what happened next, how 3 old women appeared like avenging angels, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly connect with this story. Where are you right now, and what time is it there? I want to know who's listening to this with me, because this isn't just my story alone. 6 months ago, I sat in Attorney Thompson's office, my hands trembling as I held the pen. The mahogany desk between us seemed like an ocean, and on the other side, my son David was on his knees, literally on his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Mom, without this, I'll lose everything," he sobbed, his voice breaking like it did when he was 8 and had broken Dad's fishing rod. The company, the house, Sarah and Emma's future, everything. Cascade Investments, the real estate company David had built over 15 years, was hemorrhaging money. $2 million in losses, he'd said, bad investments in Tacoma's waterfront development that went belly up when the environmental reports came back contaminated. The numbers swam before my eyes as Attorney Thompson explained the terms. "Mrs. Miller," Thompson said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "you understand this is a significant sum. $450,000 represents the full value of your Bellevue property." I looked at my son, my baby boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them bouquets. Sarah stood behind him, her hands on his shoulders, her eyes fixed on the floor. She wore the pearl necklace I'd given her for their 10th anniversary. "Mom," David whispered, "I promise you'll have your own suite. We'll convert the guest wing. You'll have your privacy, your own bathroom, everything. We'll take care of you. You're not losing a home, you're gaining a family around you." The pen felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Behind me, through the office window, I could see my Victorian houses for sale sign already planted in the yard. The house where David took his first steps, where my husband Paul died in my arms 5 years ago, where 40 years of Christmas mornings and birthday parties and quiet Sunday afternoons lived in every corner. Thompson slid a sealed envelope across the desk to me, separate from the main documents. "Mrs. Miller, I'm required to give you this. It contains some additional information about your rights. Keep it safe." He gave me a look I couldn't quite read, his head shaking almost imperceptibly. I signed. What else could I do? David was drowning and I was his mother. The ink wasn't even dry when David wrapped me in his arms, the smell of his cologne, the same brand his father wore, making my heart ache. "I'll make you proud, Mom. I swear. This is just temporary. 6 months, maybe a year, and Cascade will be back on top. You'll see." Sarah finally looked up, met my eyes for just a second, then looked away again. "Thank you, Rose," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We won't forget this." The irony of those words would haunt me later. They didn't forget. They just chose to remember differently. 6 months later, I realized that hug from David, that desperate embrace in Thompson's office, was nothing but a Judas kiss. The son I'd raised, the boy who once refused to let me carry grocery bags because ladies shouldn't lift heavy things, would become someone I didn't recognize. But that day, signing those papers, I still believed in the fiction every mother tells herself. That love is enough, that family means something sacred, that the child you raised would never turn on you when you're old and vulnerable. Moving into David's house in Redmond should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like checking into a hotel where you're not quite welcome. My suite turned out to be the converted den off the kitchen, a 10 by 12 room with a daybed and a curtain instead of a door. The bathroom I'd have to share was down the hall, past Emma's room. "It's temporary, Mom," David said, not meeting my eyes as he set down my suitcase. Once the Cascade deal with the Koreans closes, we'll renovate properly. The first month, he still came home for dinner. We'd sit at the dining table, Paul's mother's table that I'd given them as a wedding gift, and David would tell me about his meetings, his plans, how close he was to turning everything around. Sarah would nod along, serving the pot roast I'd taught her to make, though she'd somehow forgotten the rosemary. By the second month, the dinners became twice a week, then once, then not at all. "Big client dinner," he'd text. "Don't wait up." But I could smell the whiskey on him when he came home at midnight, stumbling past my curtain, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. The David I raised didn't drink. Paul and I had maybe a glass of wine at Christmas, that was all. But this David, this stranger wearing my son's face, kept a bottle of Jameson in his home office and thought I didn't notice when the level dropped daily. 3 months in, Cascade lost 3 major clients in 1 week. I heard him on the phone, his voice rising, desperate. "No, we can restructure. Please, just give me another month. The capital is coming." That's when Sarah started eating dinner in their bedroom. Emma, sweet 16-year-old Emma, would sit with me sometimes, doing her homework at the kitchen table while I cooked. "Grandma," she said one evening, looking up from her calculus, "why does Dad yell so much now?" What could I tell her? That failure can poison a man? That money, too much or too little, changes people? I just smoothed her hair, the same honey color as David's when he was young, and said, "He's under stress, sweetheart. It'll pass." But I knew it wouldn't. I could see it in the way he stopped looking at me. Really looking at me. I'd become furniture, something in the background of his life, no different from the coat rack by the door. 5 months in, I discovered he'd been selling my things. I'd brought a few antiques from the old house. Mom's silver tea service, Paul's father's pocket watch, the first edition books Paul collected. One by one they disappeared. "Have you seen Grandpa's watch?" I asked Sarah one morning. She couldn't look at me. "David said you told him he could sell some things. For the business." I never said that. But what was the point of arguing? I was living under his roof, the roof my money had saved, eating food he paid for, dependent on him for everything. Even my Social Security checks, I'd signed over to help with household expenses. "Just until Cascade recovers," he'd said. That night, I called Margaret O'Brien, my friend from the senior center. We'd known each other for 12 years, ever since Paul's cancer diagnosis brought me to the support group she ran. "Rose, honey," Margaret said in her Irish lilt that 40 years in America hadn't softened, "you sound tired." "I'm fine," I lied, sitting in my converted closet of a room, whispering so David wouldn't hear. "Just adjusting my arse," she said. "I know that voice. That's the voice of a woman who's disappearing. You still have that envelope Thompson gave you?" I looked at my purse, where the sealed envelope sat untouched. "Yes, but David says a lot of things, doesn't he? Keep it safe, Rose. Something tells me you're going to need it." The night of November 15th. That's when everything shattered. When the mask finally came off, and I saw what my son had become. Or maybe what he'd always been, hidden under the love only a mother's blindness could provide. November 15th. The rain started at dinner time, that particular Seattle rain that doesn't pour so much as envelop everything in a cold, gray shroud. I'd made David's favorite, beef stroganoff with extra mushrooms the way his father liked it. The table was set for 4, though I knew it would just be Emma and me again. Emma picked at her food, quiet. "Dad didn't come home last night either," she said. At 11 o'clock, I heard his car in the driveway, the engine revving too high, the way drunk drivers do when they're trying to seem sober. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. David stood in the kitchen doorway, swaying slightly, his tie askew, his eyes bloodshot. The smell of whiskey and something else, failure maybe, rolled off him in waves. "Still up?" he slurred, though it came out more like an accusation than a question. "I wanted to talk to you about my room," I said gently. "You mentioned renovating." "Renovating?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Renovating? Cascade just lost the last contract. The Koreans pulled out. Martinez wants his investment back. I'm facing bankruptcy, and you want to talk about renovating?" "David, I just meant... The glass of whiskey in his hand flew across the room, shattering against the wall behind me. I felt the spray of liquid on my cheek, saw the amber stains spreading down the white paint. "You want more?" His voice rose to a roar. "After everything? After I took you in? Fed you? Kept a roof over your ungrateful head? David, I gave you everything. You gave me nothing!" He stepped closer, and I could see Sarah at the top of the stairs, frozen, watching. "A loan I can't repay. A burden I can't carry. You're nothing but dead weight, Mother. Nothing but a useless, pathetic burden." Each word hit like a physical blow. This wasn't my son. This couldn't be the boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who made me Mother's Day cards with crayon hearts, who promised at Paul's funeral that he'd take care of me. "Get out," he said, his voice suddenly quiet, which was somehow worse than the yelling. "Get out of my house." "David, please!" "Get out! Get out now!" He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise, and dragged me toward the door. "I don't want to see your face. You're not my mother. You're nothing. Get out!" Sarah stood on the stairs, her hand over her mouth, but she didn't move, didn't speak. Emma's door cracked open, and I saw her terrified face before Sarah pushed it closed again. David shoved me out the front door. I grabbed my purse. Thank God it was on the entry table, but not my coat. The door slammed behind me, the lock clicking with a finality that echoed in my chest. The rain hit me immediately, cold and relentless. November in Seattle doesn't forgive. Within seconds, I was soaked through my thin cardigan, my house slippers squelching on the wet pavement. No umbrella, no coat, no car keys, my phone. At least I had my phone. I stood in the driveway for a moment, looking back at the house my money had saved. Every window was lit, warm and golden against the black night. I could see Sarah pulling David away from the window, see Emma's silhouette in her bedroom. No one came after me. I started walking. Where else could I go? The rain drove sideways, stinging my face. My arthritis screamed with every step. 3 blocks, 5. My legs shaking, my teeth chattering so hard I thought they might crack. The bus stop, number 7, appeared like a beacon. A small shelter with a bench, a fluorescent light that flickered but held. I collapsed onto the cold metal bench, pulled out my phone with numb fingers. Margaret answered on the second ring, despite the late hour. "Rose?" "Margaret," I said, and then I couldn't say anything else because I was sobbing too hard. "Where are you, honey? I'm coming right now." Margaret's 1998 Buick pulled up to the bus stop 20 minutes later, windshield wipers fighting against the rain. She didn't say a word, just got out with an umbrella and a wool blanket, wrapped me up, and guided me to the car like I was made of spun glass. "My house is closer than yours," she said, her Irish accent thicker with emotion. "And the others are already on their way." "Others? You think I'd keep this to myself? June and Carmen need to know." Margaret's Capitol Hill craftsman was everything David's house wasn't. Warm, lived in, smelling of tea and cinnamon. She led me straight to the bathroom, turned on the hot shower, and laid out dry clothes, a sweatshirt that said County Cork, and fleece pants that pooled around my ankles. When I emerged, 3 women sat around Margaret's kitchen table like a council of war. June Patterson, 78, still sat with military posture from her Vietnam nursing days. Her steel-gray hair was pinned back severely, but her eyes were soft as she stood to hug me. "Honey, Margaret told us that boy needs a lesson in respect." Carmen Rodriguez, 70, pushed a steaming mug of something that smelled like chocolate and cinnamon into my hands. "Mija, drink. It's got a little tequila, for the cold." Her accent, Mexican by way of 40 years in Seattle, wrapped around me like another blanket. "I'm so embarrassed," I started, but Margaret cut me off. Don't you dare be embarrassed about that ungrateful bastard's behavior." I told them everything. The words poured out like the rain outside, the house sale, the promises, the slow degradation, the violence of tonight. June took notes in a small notebook, her nurse's training making her document everything. Carmen held my hand when I started crying again. Margaret paced, her fury barely contained. $450,000, June said quietly. He stole $500,000 from you. I gave it to him. Under false pretenses, Carmen interrupted. I ran 3 restaurants, Corita. I know a bad deal when I hear one. He promised care, delivered abuse. Show them the envelope, Margaret said suddenly. I pulled it from my purse, still damp from the rain, but intact. The seal broke with a soft crack. Inside was a single document and a business card for a different attorney. Diane Martinez, elder law specialist. June read it first, her eyebrows rising. Rose, do you understand what this is? No. Thompson protected you. This is a promissory note. David didn't just take your money. He borrowed it, legally, with terms. Carmen grabbed the paper, scanning it with the eye of someone who'd dealt with contracts for decades. Madre de Dios, 8% APR, the house as collateral, default clause if payments aren't made. Rose, you're not homeless. You're his creditor. He owes you this money. But he said it was a gift. What he said and what he signed are 2 different things, June said, her voice taking on the tone she probably used to explain medication to patients. This document makes you the bank, and from what you've told us, he's in default. Margaret stopped pacing. That means you can call in the loan. Take the house. I can't take his house. Why not? Carmen's voice was sharp. He took yours. Sarah, Emma, stood by while he threw you into the rain, June said firmly. Rose, I've seen too many women, good women, kind women, destroyed by family members who see kindness as weakness. In Vietnam, I watched nurses give everything to save soldiers who cursed them for not doing more. This is the same thing. Margaret sat down beside me. Remember when we met? You were so strong, taking care of Paul through his cancer. Where's that woman? Where's the Rose who fought insurance companies and hospital bureaucracies? That was different. That was for Paul. And this is for you, Carmen said, which is just as important. More important, because you're still here. June pulled out her phone. I'm calling the others. Others? The Senior Center Women's Group. Dorothy, Patricia, Linda, Susan, all of them. Some of them have stories worse than yours. Dorothy's son-in-law sold her house while she was in the hospital. Patricia's daughter drained her bank accounts. We've all seen this. What are you planning? Margaret smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Justice, honey. The kind that comes with witnesses. By 3 a.m, they had a plan. Not for violence or revenge, but for something better. Accountability. June contacted her nephew, a local journalist. Carmen called Father O'Malley from St. James, where David and Sarah had been married. Margaret reached out to the Senior Center Network. 20 women who'd survived wars, depressions, divorces, and worse. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Margaret said. We pay David a visit. I don't know if I can. You can, June said firmly, because we'll be with you. All of us. We didn't sleep. How could we? Instead, we sat around Margaret's kitchen table as the rain finally stopped, studying that promissory note like battle plans. The acceleration clause is key, June said, her reading glasses perched on her nose. If David misses even one payment, the entire amount becomes due immediately. Has he made any payments? Carmen asked. I shook my head. He said it was a gift. I never expected. That's fraud, Margaret interrupted. He told you one thing, signed another. Thompson knew what he was doing, giving you this. The document was beautiful in its simplicity. Principal amount, $450,000. Interest rate, 8% per annum, compounded monthly. Collateral. The property at 4257 Maple Drive, Redmond, Washington. David's house. The house I'd been thrown out of hours ago. There's more, June said, pulling out her phone. Washington State Law, Title 74, Chapter 34. Elder abuse. What David did tonight? Throwing you out? Physical intimidation? Financial exploitation? These are felonies. Carmen was already on her laptop, fingers flying. His company, Cascade Investments. I can see the public filings. 3 liens against it, 2 lawsuits pending. The company's worthless. Which means the house is his only asset, Margaret said slowly. The house you have a legal claim to. I thought about David at 5, crying because a kid at school said his drawing was ugly. I'd hung that drawing, a lopsided house with a smiling sun, on the refrigerator for a year. How did that sweet boy become someone who could throw his mother into the rain? Rose, June said gently, what else did Thompson tell you when you signed? I tried to remember. He kept saying I should read everything carefully, that I had options. He seemed frustrated with David. He was protecting you, Carmen said. Without your knowledge, maybe, but he was. This note, it's bulletproof. I've seen enough contracts to know. Margaret's phone buzzed. Dorothy's in. So are Patricia and Linda. Susan's bringing her daughter, the one who's a paralegal. This is getting out of hand. No, June said firmly. It's getting into the right hands. Rose, do you know how many elderly women are financially abused by their children every year? Thousands, and they stay quiet because of shame, because of love, because they don't know their rights. Carmen nodded. When my ex-husband left me with 3 kids and a mountain of debt, you know what saved me? Other women. Women who'd been through it. Women who knew the system. But David's still my son. No, Margaret said, her voice hard. Your son was the boy who loved you. This David, the one who threw you out, he's just a debtor who assaulted his creditor. That's how you need to see him now. June's phone rang. She listened, then smiled grimly. My nephew at the Times is very interested. Elder abuse, financial fraud, a prominent real estate developer. This is news. I don't want it in the papers. Public shame is the only thing men like David understand, Carmen said. Trust me, my ex only paid child support when I had his wages garnished publicly. I looked at these women, my friends, my warriors. Margaret with her fighter's spirit that survived an abusive first marriage in Ireland. June with her steady hands that had held dying soldiers. Carmen with her business acumen that built 3 restaurants from nothing after her divorce. What about Sarah? Emma? Sarah watched him throw you out and did nothing, June said. She's complicit. But Emma needs to see that actions have consequences, Margaret said, that treating people, especially elderly parents, like disposable trash isn't acceptable. Carmen was typing again. Rose, did you know David took out a second mortgage on the house 3 months ago? My heart sank. No. $200,000, which means he's been hiding assets from you while claiming poverty. June stood up, her military bearing evident. This isn't just about you anymore, Rose. This is about every mother whose child has betrayed her trust, every elderly person thrown away when they're no longer useful. We're making a stand. The sun was starting to rise, painting Margaret's kitchen in soft gold. I thought about Paul, what he would say. He'd always been the fighter, the protector. Rosie, he'd say, sometimes love means teaching hard lessons. Okay, I said quietly. What do we do? Margaret smiled, the first real smile since she'd picked me up. First, we make you look fabulous. Carmen, you still have that St. John suit? The red one? Of course. Perfect. Rose is going to look like the creditor she is, not the victim David tried to make her. June pulled out a folder. I've printed out the relevant statutes: elder abuse, financial fraud, breach of contract. We go armed with knowledge. And witnesses, Carmen added. 20 women who've seen too much to be intimidated by a failed real estate developer. As the sun rose over Seattle, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Not the power to hurt, but the power to demand justice. To say, no more. 8 o'clock? I asked. 8 o'clock, they confirmed in unison. At this moment, sitting in Margaret's warm kitchen, I realized I wasn't alone. You know what? So many of us, mothers, fathers, grandparents, we trust blindly in our children. And when they betray us, We stay silent out of shame. If this story touches your heart, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've been through something similar, type "I understand" in the comments. Let me know I'm not alone in this, because what I'm about to tell you next, it changed everything. We're going back to the story now, back to that morning when 20 strong women decided enough was enough. By 6 a.m., Margaret's house looked like a command center. June had transformed the dining room into what she called operations, with printed documents, highlighted statutes, and a timeline of events. Carmen was on her third pot of coffee, coordinating arrivals by phone. I sat in the red St. John's suit, a power suit if there ever was one, feeling like I was wearing armor. "Dorothy's bringing her video camera," Carmen announced, "the good one, from her granddaughter's wedding business." "Patricia's husband is coming too," June added. "Former police chief. He wants to make sure everything stays legal and documented." Margaret was braiding my hair into an elegant bun. "You look like a CEO, honey, like someone David should have respected." The doorbell rang. Father O'Malley stood there, tall and imposing despite his 70 years, wearing his collar. "Rose," he said, taking my hands, "Margaret told me everything. I married David and Sarah. I baptized Emma. This breaks my heart, but some lessons must be taught." By 7:30, 23 people had gathered. The women from the senior center looked like a corporate board meeting. Suits, pearls, perfect makeup. These weren't helpless old ladies. These were survivors, warriors in wool and silk. Linda Chen, whose daughter had stolen her retirement savings, stood ramrod straight. My daughter thought shame would keep me quiet. She was wrong. Patricia Williams, whose son-in-law had sold her house while she was recovering from surgery, nodded grimly. The only thing these people understand is consequences. Susan Martinez, no relation to the lawyer, brought her paralegal daughter Angela. "Mom told me what happened," Angela said. "I've seen the promissory note. It's ironclad. David's in default. You could file for immediate possession today." "I don't want to make them homeless." "Like he made you?" Dorothy interrupted, her usually gentle voice sharp. "Rose, he has options. He can sell, he can refinance, he can get a loan. You had no options when he threw you out." June stood up, addressing the group. "Remember, we're not there to threaten or intimidate. We're there to witness and document, to ensure Rose's rights are protected. If David wants to escalate, that's on him." "The neighbors will see," I said weakly. "Good," Carmen said. "Public accountability. That's the point." Father O'Malley cleared his throat. "I've called Sarah's parents. They're driving up from Portland. They had no idea what's been happening." My stomach turned. The Wheelers were good people. They'd been so happy when David and Sarah married. "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that their daughter stood by while her husband committed elder abuse." Margaret's phone buzzed. "June's nephew is already there with a photographer. This is news, honey. Prominent developer accused of elder abuse. David's going to learn what real consequences look like." The convoy formed naturally, 6 cars, moving through the morning traffic toward Redmond. I rode with Margaret, my hands clenched in my lap, the promissory note in my purse feeling like it weighed a ton. "You know what I thought about during my divorce?" Margaret said suddenly. "My mother. She stayed with my father through 40 years of hell because she didn't think she had choices. She died thinking she deserved it. You're not going to be her, Rose." We turned onto Maple Drive at 7:55. The suburban street was quiet, perfect lawns and 2-car garages, the American dream in architectural form. David's house, my collateral, sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, its windows reflecting the morning sun. A small crowd was already forming. June's nephew, a young man with a press badge, a photographer, 3 neighbors who'd come out to see what was happening. "Ready?" Margaret asked. I thought about the bus stop, the cold rain, the way David's fingers had dug into my arm, the way Sarah had just watched. "Ready!" We parked in a line along the street, a parade of sensible sedans and aging SUVs. 23 people emerged like an army, moving with purpose toward the house I'd been thrown out of 12 hours ago. Mrs. Henderson from next door was in her yard, pretending to water plants that were already soaked from last night's rain. "Rose, is everything all right?" "It will be," June said crisply. We assembled on the sidewalk in front of David's house, Father O'Malley in the center, the women arrayed behind him like a Greek chorus. The journalist took notes. The photographer raised his camera. "Should we ring the doorbell?" Carmen asked. "No need," Margaret said, pointing. David had appeared in the window, his face pale, his hair uncombed. He saw the crowd and froze. I watched him mouth something to someone behind him, Sarah probably. The front door opened slowly. David stood there in yesterday's clothes, wrinkled and stained. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking slightly. "This is private property," he said, but his voice cracked. "I'll call the police." "Please do," Patricia's husband said calmly, showing his retired chief's badge. "I'd be happy to discuss elder abuse statutes with them." David's face went from pale to gray when he saw the badge. "This is harassment. You're trespassing." "We're on the sidewalk," Angela said crisply, her paralegal training evident. "Public property, and we're here to discuss a legal matter regarding a promissory note in default." Sarah appeared behind David, still in her bathrobe, her face puffy from sleep or tears. When she saw the crowd, she gasped. "What is this?" "Accountability," Margaret said simply. Carmen stepped forward, unfolding the promissory note with theatrical precision. Her voice carried clearly across the morning air. Promissory note dated May 15, 2024. Principal amount, $450,000. Interest rate, 8% per annum. First payment due June 15, 2024. She paused. "Mr. Miller, have you made any payments on this loan?" David's jaw dropped. "That's not— Mom said it was a gift." "Did she?" June asked. "Because this legal document you signed says otherwise." The neighbors were gathering now. Mrs. Henderson had given up pretending to garden. The Johnsons from across the street stood on their porch. Someone was recording on their phone. "Mom," David said, looking at me for the first time since throwing me out. Tell them you gave me the money." I stepped forward, the red suit making me feel taller, stronger. "I gave you a loan, David, a loan you promised to repay, a loan that came with promises of care and respect. You defaulted on all of it." "This is ridiculous." Father O'Malley's voice cut through like a blade. "David Miller, I married you in my church. I heard you vow to honor family, to protect those weaker than yourself. Last night, you threw your elderly mother into a storm. Would you like me to read the police report about elder abuse?" Sarah's face crumbled. "Police report?" "Filed this morning," Patricia's husband said. "Assault, elder abuse, financial exploitation. These are felonies in Washington state." David turned to Sarah, desperate. "You were there. Tell them she left on her own." Sarah stared at him, and something shifted in her face. She whispered, "David, what promissory note?" The silence stretched taut as a wire. "You told me," Sarah said, her voice rising, "that your mother gave us the money. A gift. You said she wanted to help." "Sarah, not now." "Not now?" Sarah's composure shattered. "You borrowed $500,000 and didn't tell me? You put our house up as collateral and didn't tell me?" Carmen smiled grimly. "Oh, honey, there's more. Show her the second mortgage documents, Angela." Angela pulled out her phone, showing Sarah the screen. 3 months ago, $200,000 second mortgage. Did you know about that? Sarah's face went white. "You said that was for the business. You said it was secured by Cascade assets." "Cascade has no assets," Carmen said. 3 liens, 2 lawsuits. The company's worthless. Sarah turned to David, her voice deadly quiet. "You mortgaged our house twice? You threw out your mother after she saved us? You lied to me?" "Sarah, please." She pulled out her phone, swiping through it frantically. Then she held it up. The screen showed a video. Dark, grainy, but the audio was clear. David's voice, slurred and vicious. "You're nothing but dead weight, Mother. Nothing but a useless, pathetic burden. Get out!" "I recorded it," Sarah said. tears streaming down her face. "I recorded you throwing her out. I sent it to my divorce lawyer this morning." The crowd murmured. The journalist scribbled frantically. The photographer's camera clicked. "Sarah," David reached for her, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again." She turned to me. "Rose, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him. I should have said something. I was scared." "Of what?" June asked coldly. "Of him," Sarah whispered. "Of what he'd become. The drinking, the anger. Emma and I have been walking on eggshells for months." Emma appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, her young face confused and frightened. "Mom? Grandma? What's happening?" Sarah pulled her daughter close. "We're leaving, sweetheart. Pack a bag." "Sarah, you can't," David started. "Watch me," Sarah said. "And David? My lawyer will be in touch. About the divorce and about the fraud. You hid assets, you lied about debts, you committed elder abuse in our home. I'm done." David stood there swaying slightly, looking at the crowd of witnesses, the journalist, the camera, his wife's retreating back. His empire, built on his mother's money, maintained by lies, crumbling in real time. "Mom," he said desperately. "Mom, please, we can work this out." Margaret laughed, harsh and bitter. "Now she's your mom? Last night she was nothing. Which is it, David?" The journalist stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, do you have any comment about the elder abuse allegations?" David's face twisted. "Get off my property. All of you. Get off my property." "Actually," Angela said sweetly, "given the promissory note in default and the acceleration clause, there's a strong argument that this is Rose's property. Would you like to see the paperwork?" Sarah returned to the doorway with a manila folder, her face set with determination. "You want to know the truth? All of it?" She opened the folder, pulling out document after document. 6 months, I've been documenting everything. Every lie, every drunk night, every penny moved without my knowledge. David's face went from gray to white. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago." She turned to the crowd. "David told me Rose gave us the money as an early inheritance. He said she insisted, that she wanted to help. I found out about the loan 3 weeks ago when I was looking for Emma's birth certificate and found the paperwork." "3 weeks?" I gasped. "You knew?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I confronted him. He said he'd handle it, that he'd talk to you, make it right. Instead, he got worse. The drinking escalated. He started hiding money. I found accounts I didn't know existed." She pulled out her phone again, scrolling through. Bank statements. 3 separate accounts in his name only. While he was crying poverty to you, Rose, he had $70,000 hidden away. The crowd erupted. Carmen cursed in Spanish. June's face was stone. Margaret looked ready to commit violence. "$70,000, I repeated numbly. "He had $70,000 and threw me out for asking about a bedroom?" Father O'Malley stepped forward. "Sarah, why didn't you say anything last night?" Sarah's composure cracked. "Because I was scared. You don't know what he's like when he drinks. The walls he punches, the things he breaks. Never me, never Emma, but the threat was always there." She looked at me. "I'm so sorry, Rose. I failed you. I failed as a daughter-in-law, as a woman, as a human being." Emma pushed past her mother, running to me, throwing her arms around my waist. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to help, but Mom said—" "Shh, sweetheart," I said, holding her tight, smelling her strawberry shampoo. "This isn't your fault." David tried one more time. "Sarah, think about what you're doing. Our marriage, our family." "Our marriage ended the day you threw your mother out," Sarah said. "Our family ended when you chose whiskey and lies over truth and love." She turned to Angela. "I want to testify. Whatever Rose needs, elder abuse charges, the financial fraud, all of it. I have recordings, documents, everything." Angela nodded, typing rapidly on her phone. "I'm sending this to Diane Martinez, the elder law attorney. Rose, she can file for immediate possession of the property today." "You can't do this," David said, but his voice was weak, defeated. "Cascade will recover. I just need time. Cascade is dead, Carmen said flatly. I made some calls this morning. Your creditors are filing for involuntary bankruptcy. You're done, David. The journalist stepped forward again. Mrs. Miller, Rose, do you want to press charges? I looked at David, this stranger wearing my son's face, this man who had taken everything and given back nothing but pain. Then I looked at the women around me, my army of survivors, my sisters in strength. Yes, I said clearly. I want him prosecuted for elder abuse. I want the loan called in. I want my money back. David fell to his knees, the same position he'd been in 6 months ago in Thompson's office. But this time, there were no tears, just shock. Mom, please. I'm not your mom, I said, echoing his words from last night. I'm your creditor. You have 30 days to vacate my property. The full amount of the loan is due immediately, $450,000 plus 6 months of interest at 8%. June did the math quickly. That's $468,000, David, due now. I don't have it. Then you'll need to sell the house, Margaret said. Quickly, before the bank forecloses on that second mortgage you hid from your wife. Sarah had gone back inside, and we could hear her on the phone. Yes, I need to file an emergency custody order. My husband has been hiding assets and committed elder abuse. Yes, I have documentation. The neighbors were no longer pretending not to watch. Mrs. Henderson had actually brought out a lawn chair. The Johnsons' teenage son was live streaming on Instagram. This is what consequences look like, Carmen said to David. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Father O'Malley knelt beside David, his voice gentle but firm. David, you need help. The drinking, the anger, the lies. This isn't who you were raised to be. Your mother gave you everything, and you gave her nothing but pain. That needs to change. David looked up at him, then at me. For just a moment, I saw the boy he'd been, scared, small, lost. Then his face hardened again. Get off my property, he said dully. Your property for 30 more days, Angela corrected. Then it reverts to Rose unless you can pay the debt in full. I stepped forward, past Father O'Malley, past my protective circle of friends, until I stood directly in front of my son. He was still on his knees, looking up at me with eyes that held nothing, no remorse, no love, just emptiness and rage. Stand up, I said quietly. He didn't move. Stand up, David. If you have any dignity left, stand up and face me. Slowly, unsteadily, he got to his feet. He towered over me. He'd gotten his height from Paul's side. But somehow, I felt taller. From my purse, I pulled out the eviction notice June had helped prepare at 4 a.m. Legal, proper, uncontestable. 30 days, David. Not 31, not 30 in a few hours. 30 days. His hand shook as he took it. You're really doing this? Your own son? My son died sometime in the last 6 months, I said, my voice steady though my heart was breaking. My son was the boy who made me Mother's Day cards, who promised to take care of me at his father's funeral. You? You're just a man who owes me money. Margaret stepped forward with another document. This is the formal demand for payment, $468,000. You can pay it, or you can lose the house. Your choice. I'll fight this, David said desperately. I'll get a lawyer. With what money? Carmen asked. Your hidden accounts? The $70,000? That'll barely cover a retainer for a case you'll lose. Sarah emerged from the house with 2 suitcases and Emma. We're going to my parents' house, she announced. Emma, say goodbye to your father. Emma looked at David, then at me, then back at David. You hurt Grandma, she said simply. I saw you push her. I heard what you said. She turned to me. I love you, Grandma. I'll call you every day, okay? I love you too, sweetheart. They walked past David without another word, loading the car in silence. As Sarah backed out of the driveway, she rolled down the window. Rose, I'll testify. Whatever you need. And David, my lawyer will be in contact about the divorce and the hidden assets. You committed fraud against me, too. The crowd began to shift, sensing the climax had passed, but I wasn't done. David, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I want you to know something. If you had just been honest, if you had treated me with basic respect, None of this would have happened. I would have helped you. I would have forgiven the debt, found a small apartment, lived quietly on Social Security. All I wanted was to be treated like a mother, not a bank account. Mom, but you couldn't even give me that. You took my money, my home, my dignity, and when I asked for nothing more than a proper bedroom, you threw me into the rain. My voice rose, carrying across the silent street. You called me a burden, useless, dead weight. The journalist's recorder was still running. The cameras were still clicking. So now you'll learn what it feels like to lose everything. Your wife, your daughter, your home, your business, your reputation, all of it gone. And unlike you, I won't throw you into the rain. The law will do that for me. Patricia's husband stepped forward. Mr. Miller, I've called some former colleagues. They'll be in touch about the elder abuse charges. I'd suggest you get a criminal lawyer as well as a civil one. David's legs gave out again. This time, no one moved to help him. Father O'Malley sighed deeply. David, I'll pray for you. But prayer without repentance is just noise. You need to look hard at what you've become. June pulled out her phone. The story's already online. Prominent Seattle developer accused of elder abuse. Your professional reputation is finished, David. I looked at my son one last time. This broken, angry man who had once been my whole world. You want to know the saddest part? Even now, even after everything, if you had just said, I'm sorry, Mom, I was wrong, just that nothing more, I might have forgiven it all. David's mouth opened, closed, opened again. But no words came out. Not an apology, not an excuse, nothing. That's what I thought, I said. I turned and walked away, my friends falling into step beside me. Behind us, David remained on his knees in his driveway, the eviction notice crumpled in his fist, his world collapsing around him. You did good, honey, Margaret said, linking her arm through mine. Did I? I asked, suddenly exhausted. I just destroyed my son's life. No, June said firmly. He destroyed his own life. You just stopped enabling it. As we reached the cars, Mrs. Henderson called out, Rose, you're welcome for coffee any time. What he did? Inexcusable. Other neighbors nodded, murmured agreement. The public shame David had earned was complete. We drove away in convoy, leaving David alone in his driveway, soon to be my driveway, with 30 days to figure out how to pay a debt he could never afford. Looking at David on his knees in that driveway, I remembered the baby who used to hold my finger while he slept. What does it mean to be a mother? Is it giving your children everything until they discard you? Or is it teaching them a lesson they'll never forget? If you're a parent, you understand this pain. If you're a child, remember, your parents are not ATMs. We're human beings with hearts that can break. Like and share if you believe in karma. Comment justice if you think I did the right thing, because the ending, it's not what you might expect. Let me tell you what happened next, how this story really ends. 2 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment at Sunrise Senior Community in Wallingford. It was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a kitchenette, but it was mine. No curtain for a door, no shared bathroom, no one to tell me I was a burden. Margaret and Carmen were hanging pictures while June arranged my books on the built-in shelves. The women from the senior center had pooled together to buy me new furniture. Nothing fancy, but everything clean and comfortable and chosen with love. The light is beautiful, Carmen said, adjusting the curtains. You can see the water from here. And the bus stop is right outside, Margaret added with dark humor, though you'll never need to sleep at one again. A knock at the door interrupted us. Sarah stood there with Emma, both carrying boxes. We brought your things from the house, Sarah said. Everything David hadn't sold. Your photos, your jewelry box, some clothes. Emma hugged me immediately. I love your new place, Grandma. It's cozy. How are you both? I asked. We're at my parents' house, Sarah said. They're furious with David. Dad wants to testify at the elder abuse trial. She paused. The divorce papers were filed yesterday. I'm asking for full custody. I'm sorry it came to this. Don't be. You opened my eyes, Rose. I was so focused on keeping the peace, I became complicit in his cruelty. She pulled out an envelope. This is from my lawyer. I'm testifying next week about the financial fraud and the abuse. After they left, June sat beside me on my new couch, a cheerful blue thing that Patricia had found at an estate sale. How are you really doing? I don't know, I admitted. I'm free, but I'm also empty. 48 years of being David's mother, and now what? Now you become Rose, Carmen said firmly. Not David's mother, not Paul's widow. Rose. That evening, Father O'Malley visited with unexpected news. There's been a development. 3 other families have come forward about David. Apparently he took investments from elderly clients at Cascade and never returned them. My stomach sank. He stole from other elderly people? It appears so. The state attorney general is now involved. This is bigger than just elder abuse, Rose. This is systematic fraud. That night, alone in my new apartment, I sat at the small desk by the window and did something I hadn't done in months. I wrote in my journal, I am 75 years old, and I am starting over. I have no house, limited money, and a son who is now a stranger. But I have something I didn't have before: dignity, self-respect, and the knowledge that I am worth more than what I can give to others. The next morning, Margaret called early. Emergency meeting at the senior center. Can you come? The community room was packed. At least 50 women, all over 60, all with the same look in their eyes, determination mixed with pain. Dorothy stood at the podium. We've all heard Rose's story. How many of us have similar stories? Show of hands. More than half the room raised their hands. Financial abuse by children, Dorothy continued. Emotional manipulation, physical intimidation. Elder abuse is an epidemic, and we stay silent out of shame. No more. Patricia stood up. I propose we formalize this. Create a support group, an advocacy network. Help other women like Rose. What would we call it? Someone asked. I stood slowly, my voice carrying across the room. The Sisterhood of Station 7. Because rock bottom, whether it's a bus station or a homeless shelter or a hospital bed, that's where we find our strength. The vote was unanimous. Within a week, we had 25 members. Within 2 weeks, we'd helped 3 other women escape abusive situations with their adult children. Father O'Malley gave us the church basement for meetings. June's nephew wrote a feature article about us. Carmen designed flyers in English and Spanish. We're not victims, became our motto. We're survivors. David's house sold at auction 3 weeks later. After the second mortgage and fees, there was just enough to pay back my loan with interest. I received a cashier's check for $468,000. I stared at it for a long time. This piece of paper that represented so much pain and loss, and ultimately freedom. What will you do with it? Margaret asked. Put it in trust, I said, for Emma's college, for the Sisterhood's emergency fund, for women who need to escape but don't have the resources. Nothing for yourself? I looked around my small apartment, at my friends, at the new life I was building. I have everything I need. 3 months after that morning in David's driveway, I sat at my desk again, pen in hand, writing a letter I knew I'd never send. Dear David, I want you to know that I'm not angry anymore. The rage that carried me through those first weeks has faded into something else. Sadness, maybe, or just acceptance. You're in Texas now, Sarah tells me, working for someone else's company, living in a studio apartment, attending court-ordered AA meetings. She says you've been sober for 60 days. I'm glad. Your father would be glad too. I'm angry at myself, though. Angry that I raised a son who could treat anyone, let alone his mother, the way you treated me. Where did I go wrong? Did I love you too much? Not enough? Did I make life too easy, solving all your problems, never letting you face real consequences? Your father used to say I babied you. Maybe he was right. Maybe if I'd been harder on you, demanded more from you, you wouldn't have grown into a man who could throw his mother into the rain. But that's the past, and I can't change it. I stopped writing, picked up the photo I kept on my desk, the only one of David I hadn't thrown away. He was 5 years old, soaking wet from playing in the sprinklers, grinning as he held up a fistful of dandelions. "For you, Mama," he'd said, "because you're pretty." That little boy was gone. Had been gone for years, probably, and I'd been too blind to see it. I continued writing. The Sisterhood of Station 7 has 53 members now. We've helped 11 women escape abusive situations with their adult children. We've testified in 3 elder abuse cases. We've raised $30,000 for emergency housing funds. Emma calls me every day. She's doing well, considering. Straight A's, planning for college. She wants to be a lawyer, she says, to help people like us. Sarah is strong, working full-time now, rebuilding her life. They don't talk about you much, but when they do, it's with sadness, not anger. Maybe someday you'll understand what you lost. Not just money or a house or a reputation, but a mother who would have died for you, a wife who loved you, a daughter who idolized you. You had everything, David, and you threw it all away for pride and whiskey and lies. Maybe someday you'll remember that little boy with the dandelions. Maybe you'll become him again, kind, generous, full of love instead of rage. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive you completely. Not today, but maybe someday. Until then, know this. I don't regret what I did. Standing up to you, demanding justice, refusing to be your victim, that saved me. It gave me back my dignity, my self-worth, my life. I'm 75 years old, and I'm finally free. Free from the need to fix you, to save you, to sacrifice myself for you. I love you. I'll always love the boy you were, but I don't like the man you became. And that's okay. I don't need to like you to move on. Be well, David. Find peace. Find help. Find yourself. But don't find me. Not until you've found that little boy with the dandelions again. Your mother, whether you acknowledge it or not. Rose. I folded the letter, placed it in my desk drawer with the others, one for each month since he'd left. Someday, maybe I'd send them, or maybe they were just for me, a way to let go, word by word, of the son I'd lost and the mother I'd been. Outside my window, the sisterhood was gathering for our weekly meeting. Strong women, survivors all, ready to face whatever came next. I stood, straightened my dress, red again, because red meant power, and headed for the door. Never too old to rise, I said to myself, our motto, our truth, our battle cry. The moral of this story, if there is one, is simple. Self-love isn't selfish, it's survival. I'm 75 years old, and I learned the most important lesson of my life. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal, it's self-preservation. If you're being exploited by your own family, don't stay silent. Find your community. Do you think I should forgive David? Comment forgive or never. Subscribe to hear more true stories about women who never give up. And remember, you're never too old to demand respect. Thank you for listening to my story. May you never need to use these lessons, but if you do, may you find your own sisterhood of Station 7.